Welcome, everyone. Well, you know it's Friday because Lindsay and I are here again. It's episode 9 of Future Strong, and we are delighted to have you live or listening in. My name's Nikki Garchea, and I'm the co-founder and chief customer officer of Capfinity. And at Capfinity, we are all about taking strengths through the employee life cycle, from recruitment through to development and transformation. And this special episode is going to focus very much on strengths. You're going to learn more than you ever wanted to know about Lindsay and I as we use ourselves as experiments to talk about our strengths in the session. Please stay seated, Lindsay. Do not run away. But Lindsay, who are you?
Hi, Nikki. Thank you so much.
Hi.
I can't believe we're episode 9. I think we're getting a little giddy. I'm Lindsay Pollock. I am a career and workplace expert with a special focus on early career success. I am a proud brand ambassador for the Capfinity V platform, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And I'm the author of 4 books. The newest is Recalculating: Navigate Your Career Through the Changing World of Work.
Wonderful. And do you want to, Lindsay, show and tell?
Can I?
Just as you give that great introduction, what you got a new person in your house?
This is the worldwide premiere, worldwide unveiling of Recalculating. The book has arrived.
You must
I'm going to do an unboxing, Graham. So the worldwide exclusive, of course, had to be here on Future Strong. So this is the book, Recalculating. It is very exciting when you do the work that we do to have something you can hold in your hands. I'm not going to lie, it's very powerful and exciting, and I cannot wait to launch it into the world. Nikki Garchea is featured in chapter 2. We'll talk about that in a moment, but this is the goods. You saw it here first.
Amazing work to get it to this point, and lovely to have something in your hand, not just a virtual book. Wonderful.
Thank you.
We're definitely going to get into recalculating, but it's been quite the week. We have colleagues in Texas. I didn't think we could start this without acknowledging the terrible time that they've had. And you've obviously been at some pretty exciting conferences, but would love your reflections on the week.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. All of our thoughts are with those in Texas who are missing water and cold and suffering. There are plenty of fantastic organizations to support. So take a look on social media. Maybe we can post a few on to the comments, but thank you for mentioning that. My biggest event this week was yesterday. I had the pleasure of attending the NACE HBCU, Historically Black Colleges and Universities Summit, which was absolutely tremendous. We've had a lot of the speakers from that summit and participants here on Future Strong. And I thought maybe I could spend a couple of minutes just reflecting on some of the top themes from that event. First of all, congratulations to NACE for hosting the topic in such a timely way, with all of the increased attention to racial justice issues in the United States and elsewhere. There's been a lot of focus on HBCUs. Welcome, Sean Wanzo is in the crowd. Thank you for being here. And I spoke to a lot of our followers on the chat yesterday at the conference. So NACE pulled together a really great program. They had university presidents from HBCUs, which was a really great perspective. Of course, career services professionals from those schools, recruiters who recruit at those schools. Good morning, Fred Burke. Thank you for being here. And of course, my favorite part was they had a student panel of students who go to those schools and were incredibly candid about how they feel about companies that recruit, about the organizations that they work with. So I thought I'd give a couple takeaways, and I jotted some down. The biggest takeaway by far from the career services professionals, the university president, and the students was every HBCU is not the same. Do not lump us together just because we all fall into that category. If you're going to recruit here, you need to know that we are all different, just like every university is different. I thought that was really powerful. As one example, Spelman College does not have a business major. And so you need to know that before you go there. The students also said something that we hear over and over from recruiters on this show, which is relationships are everything. You need to form relationships with the professors, and the professors' opinion of employers are tremendously valued at HBCUs. I think they are everywhere, but particularly at HBCUs. the alumni from their schools who have gone to your company and will give an honest, authentic view of what it's really like to work at your company as a person of color was really powerful. And, to be really blunt, I thought the career services people were very honest. And I thought really doing a service to employers when they said, you need to give us money. One of them, I believe it was Maura Quinn from Liberty Mutual, is going to be a guest on our show in a few weeks, said, do you have an interest in HBCUs or are you making an investment in HBCUs? So it's really nice that you want to go and recruit there and post a job or two, but are you really investing in their success? And the message to nonprofits and smaller organizations who don't have big corporate budgets was come in and train our students, offer them internships, offer volunteer activities where they can build their skills through your organization, come and teach them how to mock interview and mentor them. But you have to actually make a commitment. This cannot be a drive-by interest in HBCUs. So just bravo to NACE and everybody who participated. It was really worthwhile.
Yeah, and so hard at these times to do something of that nature virtually, and it sounds as like it went brilliantly. So good job, NACE. Yeah. I feel on behalf of Stephen Isherwood that I at least need to comment on my side of the pond with ISE, where you're also keynoting. Do you want to say a couple of words about that?
Yes. So ISE would be considered the counterpart, I believe, to NACE. Help me out. Institute of Student Employers. I'm going to be keynoting their event in the middle of March, which is very much thanks to Nikki and the work I've done with Capfinity. So delighted to do that. I think more and more every event we attend is global. And the people who participate need a global perspective. So it's opened my eyes to some of the issues that are truly international. So thank you, Stephen Isherwood. Super thrilled to be involved in that event. And always thanks to Capfinity.
No, it's great work, Lindsay. And I would be lying if I said I wasn't proud to see there'd be lots of female keynotes across the world. So I'm super delighted. So this session, we are going to do a couple of things. We're going to look at, first of all, your strengths profile. And I'm going to ask you some questions. And the reason we thought we would do this session is that as part of the new book launch, people who buy a copy of Lindsay's book will be able to access Strengths Profile at no cost via the Lindsay Pollock website. And we thought it would be, we can make lots of appearances of recalculating. It's like our new mascot. It was the train. Maybe we can get a rapper for the train.
I'm going to put it on the train as
somebody,
it goes by.
There must be someone who wants to help me get on that support. But we thought it would be great just to give an example of how a strengths debrief can go. Now, we don't have the full hour that we would normally have. I clearly can't tell Lindsay it's in confidence because we know this gets downloaded a lot. So only say what you feel comfortable, Lindsay. And Lindsay's going to ask me a couple of comments on my own profile as well. So that is what we have for you today.
I feel like I'm opening my lingerie drawer to the world when I show my strengths profile, but I think it's super powerful and I'm happy to do it. And I want to be really clear on why and why I'm such a supporter of Capfinity and strengths profile. So I wrote this book, Recalculating, which is about how to keep pivoting and really regenerating your career in this new world that we find ourselves in. That could be finding a new job. That could be graduating from school and beginning a career. That could be changing careers after a long time, starting a business. That could be staying in your existing organization, but realizing that you can't stay still, right? Nobody right now can say, well, I'm just going to coast for the rest of my career. It's just not an option. And so the question I always get, and I thought about a lot when I was writing the book, is where do you start, right? Once you acknowledge that you need to be recalculating all the time, well, what does that actually mean in practice? So I developed what I call 5 rules for recalculators. And rule number 1 is what I call embrace creativity, which is, that common phrase, I think it was Einstein, you can't, if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten. If you try to solve problems with the brain that created them, you're not going to come up with unique solutions. So you have to cast a wider net in your thinking. And if you only look at the universe of options that are in your own brain, you're never going to get anywhere unique or creative or different because you don't even know. And I always think of all the students who I mentor and speak to who end up working for companies or even in entire industries that they had never heard of when they started out because you don't know what you don't know. So that begs the question, well, how do I find out what I don't know? And my answer unequivocally is assessments are a great starting point. 15 years ago, when I wrote my first book, Getting from College to Career, I used to tell people to get the Sunday paper in their town and go to the Help Wanted section, which used to be huge, and flip through the pages and circle with a big Sharpie any job that sounded even remotely interesting. Because you needed some way to see the whole universe of possibility in order to find your place in it. And I think assessments do that now with more technology because Capfinity, the whole world of possibilities, the whole world of skills and strengths that are there. And what I absolutely love about strengths is something that I used to think of as two separate categories, which is what are your skills? What are you good at? What does the assessment say you're good at? And then what do you actually want to do or enjoy? Well, strengths, and I'll have you describe it, obviously much more scientifically, combines those two in a way that I had not seen before. So when I found Capfinity, it was such a perfect fit for the message I wanted to give to people. So Nikki, I heard you speak at NYU. That's our origin story. That's our meet cute in the rom-com of Nikki and Lindsay's friendship. Can you just give an overview of what strengths are, why you've dedicated your life to it, and how Capfinity offers that to people?
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay. And to support the story, it would be great for Hayley, who's in our remote virtual studio, to bring up Lindsay's profile just on the first page, because it'll give us a good grounding of the quadrants. That's perfect, Hayley. Thank you. So for us at Capfinity, there's three, and people listening in have heard me talk about this before, so forgive the repetition, but there are three lenses that are unique to the way in which Capfinity looks at strengths. The first is we are really interested to still know what you're good at. So performance is one of those lenses. The second thing is what energizes you, what motivates you, what gives you that renewable sense when you're using that behavior. And then the third thing is how often do you want to use that behavior? And so when we look at Lindsay's report, we can see these four quadrants. We've got the dark green as realized strengths. These are things that Lindsay herself, because this is her report, has said that she uses a lot, that she does well, and that she finds energizing. So she should get a sense of a bit of a buzz when she gets to use those things. I'm smiling. We'll have to come back to the top thing that everyone's seen. The unrealized strength is the things that you're good at, that you find energizing, but you might not be using as much as you want to, or it might be something that you haven't got the opportunity to fully utilize. And for individuals in emerging talent, this is a big deal because these are often really early developing strengths that, given the opportunity to deploy in the workplace, will become realized strengths. So this is one of the critical things. You asked why I've dedicated much of my career to strengths. It's because of my belief that if we can focus on finding talent's unrealized strengths and honing that potential, then we can broaden the amount of careers on offer to people. But also the organization has a lens that isn't just about academia. It's not just about GPA, and they have a wider talent pool. And we know that that is good for particularly protected groups. And I'll shout out Black heritage and women in particular in getting into work. And then the final two, one of the things when we put Strengths Profile together, we were very aware of the work by Barbara Fredrickson, who's a amazing cognitive neuroscience scientist across the US. And Barbara Fredrickson's work was suggesting that everything being kind of positive without an acknowledgement of the things that you still needed to work on. If we were a team, we would still want someone with counterpoint. If we were a marriage, you can't be nice to each other all of the time. My husband would be saying you can be nice to me some of the time, but essentially that it's good to have balance. So Strengths Profile also includes those things that are learned behaviors. You're good at it, but it might take a bit of energy to deploy it. And weaknesses. And the weakness is something that by your own admission, you might think you're less good at. And it certainly will take energy to deploy it. In a lot of career guidance situations, traditionally, and in the world of work, we focus our performance reviews around making something that weakens you an area for development. And really, this model is about acknowledge your weaknesses, but don't try to make them the thing you're going to become famous for, because it will take a lot of effort. Whereas if you work on your realized strengths and unrealized strengths, that's where the growth can really happen. So as we go into Lindsay's profile, I know she's dying to ask me another question, but we have to acknowledge the relief as a psychologist I had when I just said to Lindsay, just out of curiosity, Lindsay, what was your top strength? And she said narrator. And I was so delighted because there was my validation study complete. So narrator is someone who is good at telling stories, is good at sharing examples, brings things to life, which I think we can acknowledge with the fourth book on your lap. This is something that you do well. So, but Lindsay, any questions before we go for the next layer?
So imagine I'm a job seeker or someone in career transition, or I've just been laid off and I take Strengths Profile. When I see these results, what is the first thing that I should do? I mean, I found narrator was incredibly validating to have that language, but action is very concerning or frightening to me that is a weakness. So what is the first thing you do when you get this report?
So the first thing I and my colleague Trudy Bateman and all of the Capfinity team would be saying is try to focus on the things that are in the biggest boxes.
Of course, I go right to the negative.
Exactly.
I'm sure a lot of people do.
Our brain is predisposed to focus on the negative. And I've run lots of particularly female leader programs, I have to say. And we do have a tendency to go, yeah, I did this tool, but let me tell you about my weakness. I was like, it was a strengths tool. Come on, people. We can definitely focus on the more positive things. But the truth be known, the realized strengths are things that you might still want to watch. You don't necessarily want to overplay them. So we'll go in and have a look at your full profile and discuss that. But really what we want to focus people on is that unrealized strength. So if you were to really hone out a career, we would be saying, are there things within your unrealized strengths and your realized strengths that you want to use more? And maybe don't make a career out of focusing on your learned behaviors, because that's where you're competent, but it's not necessarily a strength. And the worst case scenario is when potentially, particularly in early in career individuals, you might have been acknowledged for some things that people have seen you do well, but they're a learned behavior. And you can pave a career into accountancy because you were good at maths. You could pave a career to be a great investment banker with resilience. We know that's a very sought after strength. But if it doesn't give you energy to deploy it all the time, then that career won't be as nourishing as it could be.
It's so fascinating. And I like how you visually make the realized and unrealized strengths larger than the bottom two. I think that's really powerful. When I interviewed you and your co-founder, Alex Lindley, for the book, and I asked for examples of learned behavior, Alex talked about himself, that when he was an academic, he was really good at writing, right? And he is very skilled at it, and he doesn't want to do it. You also talked about how many people manage others and they're good at it, but it's totally draining and they want to go back to the work that they really love to do and not managing others and doing it. And that those were really common ways that learned behavior would show up in a strengths profile.
Exactly that. So should we go for one more page?
Yeah, let's dig in.
So one of the things I'd love to ask you, Lindsay, when you first got your profile, was there anything in there that surprised you, that you were curious about?
So the biggest thing to me when I did it, and Jeannie Lycaris at Capfinity, a good friend and supporter, talked me through it, which was really powerful. And she knew that it was spot on, of course. Narrator and spotlight, meaning being in the spotlight, being on stage, and organizer felt spot on. And in a way, it's like when you read your horoscope and you say, oh my gosh, that's me. It was putting language to things that I felt, right? And it was saying, I think having that word narrator has been so powerful, particularly on like a conference call with a large team, to say, well, that's what I can bring to this conversation. And you know what, when it comes to the action piece, or how to resolve a conflict, I'm going to be a little quieter on those issues. And I'm going to speak up when it comes to how do we frame this event, right? Or what should the topic of the article be? So I thought it gave me a language to speak about my strengths. I was really fascinated by the unrealized strengths. And specifically, if we can dig into my career, I'm a writer and a speaker. I do not coach. And I thought that esteem builder and connector were very much tied to other people and coaching, or I don't know, classes or networking. I'd love to hear a little bit more about my unrealized strengths, given the work that I do.
So I'm smiling because I'm privy to many research calls that you and I conduct together. And for those of you that don't know Lindsay well, she will esteem build. Maybe you don't realize you do with literally every introduction she makes. So esteem building is about a desire to want to help people feel confident, to help them feel positive about themselves. And I would certainly challenge in the work that we do together. I think you do that you could be giving a presentation and you're making people feel positive about themselves. So it's very much, it doesn't have to be used on a one-to-one basis. And I'm thinking about the work that you're particularly focused in on at the moment with early careers and underrepresented talent, that esteem building may really come to the fore. Adherence is one of my weaknesses, and it's to do with being able to follow rules and guidelines. and
I love following rules.
Look at that. See, energy from it. And then the final one, which I suspect won't surprise that many people, but will be interesting as you think about maybe the book launch and what you're doing with Recalculating, is connector. And this, we know, we've said many times, our dear friend Trudy Steinfeld, one of her top strengths, but this is a strength which is to do with wanting to connect with individuals, but also make connections for others. So it's not just about an individual desire to connect. Often connectors are putting people together and things together in the world around them. So if you were looking to radically change your career or recalculate yourself, it might be to think about ways in which you could particularly bring the esteem builder and the connector together.
Last question for me. As someone who owns my own business and wants to move forward and take action, I was a little concerned that was my top weakness. Can you talk about what that means to have action as a weakness? What comes to mind to me is it took me an entire year, literally 12 months, to order a desk chair because I couldn't make a decision. So is that an example of action being a weakness?
It might be, and it might be also another strength being overplayed. So it might be your detail, that you get into the detail of things that you're looking at, and that might impact sometimes your action. So it's interesting to look at the interplay. The recommendation with weaknesses is to acknowledge that these are things that won't necessarily strengthen you. So if you were saying to me, there's this particular career I really want to progress in, but I know I need to overcome this weakness, I would be saying to you, what does it look like just to get it to a place where it could be competent, maybe a learned behavior, but do you have realized strengths that you might be able to help accelerate? So it just takes a bit of the focus away from the action. So you've got judgment as a learnt behavior. And if we were coaching together, it might be that the detail needs to be dialed back a bit. So it's really about using the other aspects of the profile rather than focusing always, as we have done historically in learning and development and careers, in accelerating that weakness to become a strength. That really is energy not worth pursuing.
The interplay of these is so fascinating. And I'm going to lure you into publicly saying that you'll do this for me offline, so we could go into more detail when we don't have a public audience. But,
yeah, absolutely.
Haley, I'm wondering if we could put up Nikki's, because as I look at these, Nikki, and I always think about you and I work together really well. I like you. We like each other. I think we have compatible personalities, but we really work together very well. Can you talk about, comparing and contrasting two people's strengths? And what you mentioned is, I have strengths that are your weaknesses and vice versa. Can you talk a little bit about how this works when you put two people or groups together?
Yeah, so complementary partnerships is something that's well documented in the strengths literature. And it's very much, if you think of an orchestra, is a perfect example really of complementary strengths at play. If you scroll down, Hayley, onto the next page, one of the things that we didn't know until we prepped for this session was that we would have so many things, which actually I have weaknesses that are your strengths. So whilst we have been doing great work together, we've now actually learned that some of that is down to the interplay of you having particular strengths in areas where I have them as learnt behaviours and weaknesses, and vice versa. So you can see there my narrator is a learnt behaviour, my detail, my adherence also as weaknesses. So there is a flip side. My optimism is in my realised strengths. So it's fascinating, unbeknownst
I don't think
to
Adventure
us,
appeared. Adventure was so off of my chart that it didn't even bother appearing there. So I love that that's your first one. No, it's really fascinating when you dig into it, how many we had that were really just counterpoints.
And when you track through partnerships of time, that could be marital partnerships, it could be business partnerships, it's often the case that there is this complementary pairing. It's not the case that it's two people who are identical. And I think this is fascinating. Obviously, we do a lot of work in teams, but when we're looking to help people recruit, it's great not to just study the profile of the existing team, let's get more of that, but how can we also encourage difference to come in by bringing in different profiles as well?
So, Nikki, if someone's watching this as a career services professional, as a recruiter, can you talk a little bit about how Capfinity maps jobs or career paths to these strengths? And I'm wondering with something like Adventure, is that an entrepreneurial characteristic? I'd love to put yourself in context, but I'm curious, someone who's watching this as a recruiter, how it plays into their role.
So first of all, strengths profile, because it's a self-report, we use on the development side, career side, it's there in our V platform, but we're not using it to recruit on the basis of. So when it comes into the recruitment field, we take these strengths and we look at the organization and what is relevant for the job or for the program that they're putting together. And then we look to recruit against that program specific profile. And often it'll be strengths plus maybe coding skills or something in addition. The thing that is consistent is we are running, could be an online assessment, it could be an interview. We're looking still for that component of performance and energy. And particularly in the US, it would be an individual might show that, particularly early in career, that they might demonstrate that they've got the capability, but they've got the motivation to learn more, do more. That's the real potential for us. And so our strengths-based interviewing approach is really encouraging, rather than just asking you about past examples. We do want the student to be able to represent their hopes for the future. And that's a really kind of key differentiation when strengths gets applied into the recruitment setting.
I'm thinking how powerful this is for so many students say to me, I don't know what I'm good at. I don't know what I want. I can't figure it out. That everybody has realized strengths and everybody has unrealized strengths. Can you talk a little bit about, as a parent, you mentioned to me once about your son, some people feel like they don't have skills or that they bring nothing to the table. Can you talk about how this can be an esteem builder or a confidence builder for students?
Yeah, I think one of the things that both of our academic systems typically can do is that individuals are really credited on the basis of how they do in relation to academics, which to a degree is what we all sign up to, and it's why we went to school and why we put our children into education. But when it comes to then particularly say the annual report, I don't know if you have a report coming out of your school in the US, but my son Jake, who's 9, gets a report every year. I caveat this, he goes to a brilliant local village school. But the report tells me that Jake is essentially a really steady average student at everything, which is great. It's brilliant that he's doing well, but there's no peaks or troughs in Jake's report. And when I look at Jake as a mum who's learned to strength spot, so I'm looking at the things that energize Jake, and I'm thinking about how he might develop hopefully as an adult. I am thinking about his off the scale emotional awareness. which does not feature in his school report. I'm thinking about his incredible creativity. And so what I'm trying to do as a parent is, rather than just focus on the academics, I'm trying to acknowledge and build the esteem in these areas, which, if he acknowledges them, could end up also being career options for him. And I'm guessing, perhaps someone acknowledged your capacity to narrate and spotlight, but there are so many other things in our profiles that can make us brilliant at careers, but the academic system doesn't typically acknowledge them. You're fortunate if you do get into university that a wise career centre might start to pick up on these things. But without an acknowledgement, that these are real gifts, they can go squandered. And that can be such a terrible thing to happen, because you wouldn't then be acknowledging that you've got these things to be able to put them to work.
That's so powerful. It really resonates with me. I was a very good English student, right? I was a good writer, a good speaker. I won a storytelling contest as a kid. Makes total sense with narrator. But people said you should be a lawyer, right? That was the only job that people could associate with that skill set. And so I know that there's a career matching component to this, particularly as part of the virtual engagement and experience platform, that matches it to all the different possibilities. And I just keep coming back to the fact that you don't know. If I had known training and development or higher education administration were career choices, I would have loved them. I didn't know, right? Yeah. Everyone said, you're a good writer, be a lawyer. And that wasn't the right fit.
And to conclude this episode and then talk about kind of next week's guest, one of the things that Chelsea Williams mentioned to me the last time I was speaking to her, Chelsea at College Code, I think she was on which was definitely one of our early episodes. I was going to say episode 2 maybe. And Chelsea mentioned that at this moment with early and career students, they are having to recalculate. They are having to look at the variety of strengths that they have and start to consider multiple job options in case the first is not there for them. And I think the thing that I would want people to really take away from this session is that can be an incredible opportunity, because you have strengths. You can recalculate to different career directions that could be incredibly fulfilling, and you may have to do it several times in your career. And that's the thing that we see when we're coaching people across careers, is they'll go back to their strengths report, they'll take it again, and they'll renew that sense of, okay, there may be other options again open to me, and that's okay.
And that strengths can evolve over time. Alex talking about writing being a realized strength, and then eventually becoming a learned behavior. Also, can you just finish up, because I think it's so critical in this moment, and talk about how strengths have evolved in the general population during the pandemic?
Yeah, so last year we had over 25,000 people take strengths during the pandemic, and some of the themes that we saw were these increases in strengths such as service, such as gratitude. And I think we're already seeing that then transpire into career choices, particularly for early and career individuals who are looking for professions that maybe where perhaps they weren't considering service are now thinking, I want to contribute, I want to be thankful, I want to give something back, or indeed, I want to look at an organization who's demonstrating those strengths. So I definitely think we're seeing quite a shift in our own behavior, and that will impact then what we're expecting to see in employer behavior as well.
Just a final thought, so much during the pandemic, and even with what's going on in Texas, the word strong comes up, right? Be strong, Texas strong, pandemic strong. Just the word itself, strengths, I think is so empowering to people. So thank you for the work and for talking me through it. How can people find strengths online and take strengths profile? What is available to people who are watching?
Oh, so there you go, Hayley.
Thanks, Hayley.
As if by magic. Strengthsprofile.com is one place where they'll be able to find everything that we've discussed here. And then shortly they'll be able to have access to the tool via your website as well. So lots of access and lots of resources, I should say, on the Strengths Profile website. Wonderful. So Lindsay, thank you for being so open to sharing your profile. I hope people have enjoyed having that whistle stop tour. Tell us, who have we got next week?
Next week, I'm so thrilled. I have the honor of serving on the board of 4Block, which is a national nonprofit that helps veterans with their career transition after the military. We are going to have the founder and CEO of 4Block, Mike Abrams, who is going to talk about their fantastic work and about how companies can recruit more veterans.
Brilliant. I can't wait. Having spoken to Mike briefly through an introduction you made, a connection.
A connector.
It's a connector connection. Really going to be a great session. I know such a big focus for the audience as well. So it'd be great to welcome Mike. So everyone, thank you for listening in to episode 9. We'll be excited, maybe even more giddy to hit double figures as we do episode 10 next week. And stay safe as always, particularly it seems like week on week we have all of us new challenges. So we are thinking of you and we'll look forward to speaking to you all next week.